All right, initially, I think that what John Naka said, don't make your tree like a bonsai, but your bonsai more like a tree. And there's no right or wrong, really. But if we need to learn the craft side of it, there are definitely styles. The logic is quite simple. They're cheaper. That's really for organic fertilizer, bagged up like this and secure in position. The reason they need to be secure because we have.
Tien, I did get a question from Adrian, who said, "I'm a total novice to trees, but definitely planning on getting some very soon. So anything at all from a total novice like me." So I thought that'd be a good question to sort of base around people that are looking at, buying these nursery stock or younger trees, what they really need to look at. We did cover it in an earlier episode in terms of species types.
Yep.
So people can go back and have a look at our first ever video, basically, that discuss that.
There's so many things to consider with a question like that. I can tackle it from a few viewpoints. One is, well, how are trees produced in the nursery industry? Secondly is then what had been done to the tree in its journey to be a bonsai? And also, what do you look for and what do you perceive to be important to you as features in a tree that you like? So many people might go to a nursery and look at this cedar and say, "Whoa, that's a lovely color. I like that," and just buy it.
Yep.
And then, therefore, what do you need to look for and what do you need to be careful of when you buy a tree like this? We might be drawn to a tree for a certain feature, in this case, the foliage color. Great. But then, is there anything else in a tree that we need to look for? In the nursery industry, often trees are repotted from smaller tubes. Often they are grown and they will be put into a 2-inch tubes. And then once they've grown enough, it's pretty much straight out into a bigger pot through a conveyor belt. So the roots are not worked on at all. Not at all. Therefore, the roots, let's say if you can imagine it's been that 2-inch pot is circling in there. The roots have never been cut and into a bigger pot. And often you can see that circling, that little confined space of where the roots will stay there. And then it begins to branch out. So as far as creating a good nursery, it's off a bad start. But that's how trees are grown, because no one in the nursery industry is most people don't care about the roots there because they aren't going to the ground, they're just going to grow on. Because they don't need to pay attention to the nursery and create close and compact, fine feeder roots closer to the trunk. That allows us to put it into a tiny little pot. Okay, so that's the common practice in the nursery industry. So when you go to a nursery, let's say a general purpose nursery, when you look at a tree, first of all, obviously we look at the tree and see what attracted to you. Then we need to dig down. Okay, some nursery might not like you doing that, mess around with their trees before paying for it. But if you can see them around, you can ask their permission. "Oh, do you mind if I just have a look at the surface roots?" If you go to a bonsai nursery, that's a given. You should be able to look at it and see, okay, actually the surface roots are just right there. Obviously, we've grown this tree here, so the surface roots can be found right near the surface. Because often the surface roots are down there, just covered up with soil, and boom, out they go. So you dig down, and then we'll see, okay, where can you cut and to make a better tree out of it? Often that will be the first step. Then obviously you look at the different special features in the tree. It could be foliage color, could be the leaf size, could be the leaf autumn color, could be the leaf shape. Now if you go to a bonsai nursery, there's no guarantee that all these things have been done for you. Because often bonsai nurseries, not every nursery grow their trees 100%. Even here we still buy nursery stock in from other people and train them from there. But often we tell customers we didn't grow this tree ourselves, so the roots, I don't know what it looks like. But that will be for you to discover, so you've got to make sure you work on the roots. But if any tree that we've grown here, that we have done a root pruning over the years, we'll tell you, yep, we've done the roots. The roots should be fine. You should be able to pull it out, trim the roots in a small pot straight away because we have prepared that for you. But yeah, you do need to just be a bit careful with what's underneath the surface. It's a bit difficult now because a lot of the general nurseries, there's a monopoly, I would say, in the nursery industry. And a lot of the older nursery that used to be growing a lot of different trees, they have been bought out or they have sold out their property. So if you can, yeah, go to a local bonsai nurseries and ask questions and see if they grow their own stock and how they grow their own stock. It's not uncommon for bonsai nursery to be buying trees from other nursery and just resell. That's not a uncommon practice. But yeah, just ask those questions and get to know them, get to know how they grow their trees, and get to know what's important to them. And then you can get a sense of what to look for then. In terms of health of the tree, it should be quite simple and quite straightforward when you look at a tree. Obviously, a tree like that, in the wintertime, nothing is on the tree. So it makes it easier for us to really assess what the tree has to offer and what it doesn't have. Okay, so I like to go to nurseries and actually purchase my deciduous trees in the wintertime for that purpose. And for that reason, because there's nothing to wait, there's nowhere, nothing to hide. So should there be a big cut, should there be a little lump here and there, you can see everything. Okay, so wintertime will be the best time to go along and select your deciduous trees. I would say any tree that's been sold at the nursery should be of relatively good health.
Yep.
It'd be quite hard to find unhealthy tree in a nursery. But obviously here we grow so many trees here on site. Everything is here. We don't have a luxury to choose the best 100 tree to show you. So you can see trees that are suffering. There are trees that might be underwater, might have a bit of disease and insects. So all these are the things that you see, I'm not quite sure. You see, they're good at ask the question. And often when you ask that question, we say, yeah, that's not of the best quality. Then maybe you can pick something else from the same batch that are of better health. I don't do it anymore. I used to go around different nurseries. I'll go to the discount sections or go to the neglected sections. Because all those trees, they are obviously been neglected. Something happened to it. But you can often find little gems in there that are not perfect, but actually that makes it quite interesting. Could be a tree that's actually overgrown, has grown into the ground, too overgrown, and then that gives you actually a much bigger trunk. Or my tree that has been underwater and has lost some branches, but it has just enough feature in there for you to pick up. So when you go to a nursery, I highly recommend you go to one of those discount sections. A tree could be $20, but now it's been discounted for $2. That's perfect for us. And you'll be surprised, sometimes the best trees are made out of those rejects. Designing tree is a very personal and subjective way, because designing is what you see and what you value in a tree. Having said all that, there are some things that I have learned over the years that are important to me. I think we have covered some of those before. But in terms of just looking at the tree, a lot of people they look at this tree and say, yep, let's use the whole length. Let's design the tree. The tree has plenty of branches. But to me, the most important feature, and I always come back to it, is taper. So tree obviously is thicker down here, comes up, and pretty much from here onwards, the tree does not have much taper at all, because the tree just took off and grew that. This is where the movement finishes right around here. So we might pick up a new apex from one of these smaller branches, and the rest will cut off. So we can very easily come around and chop those top growth out. And then wire out a new leader. You can see immediately we have introduced tape because we have reduced the height. By reducing the height, then the tree immediately look a lot bigger, because now we're looking at this. This is sort of in proportion. In terms of that big, the trunk looks skinny, but we reduce the height, the trunk now looks thicker. So when you look for materials, don't get drawn in by just the size of it. And looking a bit underneath, okay, does it have good enough movement down there? Does it have plenty of branches for you to play with? All right, and often these are all the offcuts. All these are the sacrifice branch that the tree has put on over the years. Now they have done their job. Now we just remove them, and then we can pick up a new apex and begin to work on a tree. There are definitely styles that we have over the years categorized trees in certain styles and certain shape. Having said that, it doesn't mean that a tree has to be in a certain style for it to be considered a good bonsai. And in fact, a lot of trees that are interesting and unusual because it doesn't quite fit into a mold. So I don't think I want to bore you with, okay, this is formal upright. Obviously, a formal upright is a tree with a trunk going straight up, formal upright, so branching evenly and proportionally spaced out around the trunk. That's a formal upright. But this trunk isn't perfectly straight. Now, would you then try all you can try to straighten it? Not necessarily. But it doesn't really fit an informal upright where the trunk has a lot of twist. This has very, very slight movement to it. What style does it fit into? I don't know. Could be in between. Okay, so that argument then becomes a bit unnecessary as to what, does it need to be fit a certain style. However, when we look at a tree, we have nothing to go to. Those styles then become your guidelines. Okay, if you can see something special in a tree, go for that. Don't need to be limited to what styles that you have learned and what you've been told. But let's say you look at a tree, you are totally clueless and you are totally lost. This is where the guideline comes in, because those guidelines can guide you out of that little maze, that little bit of confusion that the tree that you couldn't see through. Okay, then you can say, okay, this tree can be worked on as a informal upright. It can be turned into a windswept. It can be turned into a cascade. Or it can be turned into a raft where you die it down, all the trees come up. So a tree can be turned into anything. So that style is up to your creativity to decide. In fact, I've never told my customers who come and learn and say, this tree is this style. I don't think I ever use that phrase. But when they ask me, what style is this tree? I say, well, this looks more like certain style, but it doesn't matter. The tree don't care. The tree don't care what style it is. As long as you make the best of it, you keep it healthy, and the tree works with you, and the tree looks great to you, and then you're cognizant of its health, and then the tree is working with it, and that's fine. So there are different styles that you can refer to when you're totally lost with where to go with the tree. But I do not feel that you need to be limited to a certain style, that it has to be a certain style. And in fact, this tree is a bit too dramatic for an informal upright, but who cares? I don't. It's a tree that I'm creating, and it looks good to me. Okay, obviously it can be worked on, but we wire them according to your creativity. And that's why every tree is unique. That's why every person is unique. All right, and then we use that same sort of principle to the tree and respect what the tree has to offer. I'll make one point. The tree has a mind of its own. We might wire the tree a certain way, but the tree might not like it. That's why I mentioned earlier, if we don't work with a tree, we want the tree to be informal upright, but the tree might say, yeah, I want to be a formal upright. This might just take off, and then this here might just die off in 2 or 3 years' time. Then let's say, well, that's what the tree is telling us, that it doesn't want to be that way. Often we might wire the branches down, we might wire the branches a certain way, but the tree doesn't like it. That we didn't break it, but it just doesn't like it. Then that's why we need to then take a step back and say, okay, what can we do then now with how the tree has responded to our training? Then we've got to work with that. And I think from that, we tackle a tree with what we have in mind, but a year or two down the track, I do feel that we need to learn to take a step back and see what the tree wants to do and work with it. And often from that, you create the most unique tree, something that no one can replicate, because we have listened to what the tree wants us to do. All right, but if you start from a young tree, you can have a lot more control. But yeah, that's also ultimately what we needed to do.
Do you think that's changed over the years? And did bonsai used to be a lot more formal and you had to really stick by the rules?
Very good question. I'm going to give you a bit of thought. My first thing that comes into mind is, I think the saying is, you got to learn. You need to learn the rules in order to break them. Okay, so in the early stages of bonsai training, we stick to what we were taught, and which is those from our right, from our right, wind spread, cascade, forest style, and all that. But then later on, once you've learned that as a foundation to work on trees, then we then begin to appreciate actually every tree is different. Every tree offers a certain unique quality to this individual. Just like when we look at snow, like snow to us is snow. But we know that every snowflakes are unique. Like not one snowflakes are the same. So every tree has different DNA, different life that it leads to. So I think over the years, I have definitely come to appreciate, to respect that differences within each tree. So I wouldn't recommend that we take that route as to do whatever we want. I would say learn those basics, how to train them and what the styles are. Learn those basics. Then after you've done it for a while, then you can develop your own flair, how you approach trees. That's later on. To say that you can just do whatever you want, I think it's a bit irresponsible because we haven't learned the basics yet. But once you have that, you can then create your own things. Let your creativity guide your tree and let the tree guide you how to shape it. So I think there is a bit of progression there. Yeah.
You've got to fundamentally learn how to make a bonsai look like a mature tree. Essentially,
initially, the progression will be initially we try to make every tree look like a bonsai. I think that's all we try to do.
Yeah.
But later on, then we try to make that bonsai look like a tree.
Right.
All right. Initially, I think that's what John Naka said. Don't make your tree like a bonsai, but your bonsai more like a tree. And I think that's making your tree like a bonsai is not wrong. That's what we all started with. Because all of us, we look at a bonsai, well, we have a certain image and we try to create that. That's making a tree into a bonsai. And then later on, we then can begin to appreciate what a tree has to offer. Then we begin to then work as I suppose, a collaboration with a tree other than a total control of what the tree needs to be. So I would say that's a natural progression. I wouldn't say what's better, what's worse, what's right or wrong. They all have their place in terms of, because at the end of the day, it's an art form. There's no right or wrong really, but if we need to learn the craft side of it. So all the things I've been sharing is the craft, how to interpret and how to introduce interest into a tree and how to get a tree somewhere. Then from there, your creativity should take over from there and guide you, provided you have a firm foundation to work with.
Another couple of questions, and they're sort of based around the same thing from Chris and Derek. Chris was saying, when is the best time on blue cedar to proceed with wiring, removing needles? And one from Derek, once you wire a tree, how long do you leave the wire on for?
Okay. Because we run a commercial nursery that we need to work on hundreds of trees each time, the best time is the right time to do it. The next best time is whenever we can make time to work on them. That's just the reality. Okay, so as far as removing needles and plucking them out, we like to do them in, I would say autumn time would be a very good time to do them, because the autumn time the tree has done all that it needed to do through the growing season. So the new needles have come through. The old needles are still there, but they have done their job in helping the tree to grow. So the older needles in autumn time can be removed. I often would not remove the whole lot. I'll leave some on the tree for them to be removed the following year. So what I mean is I won't pluck it out so clean that all that the tree has left is this year's needles. I'll leave some of it on it, albeit a small number. And next spring, then we can pluck them out when next year's new needles come through. Okay, so I often try to keep 2 years worth of needles on the cedars. So autumn time would be a good time to do it, but often a good time to do it is when you attempt to wire, because you need to clear out the path, you need to clear out the space, you need to alternate branching pattern, so you need to do some plucking, some removal of the needles for you to wire more efficiently and more effectively. So then when do we wire a tree like this? I would say any time other than spring would be a good time. And the only reason for us to not wire them in springtime is springtime you have a lot of new growth growing up from the tip. They are so soft. And this applies to pines too. They are so soft and you can just bump it and they can fall off, or they can get damaged. So we try to avoid wiring all of our pine or needle conifers in the springtime, just for that simple reason. We do not want to damage all the new growth. And I'll find any other time it's quite safe to do them. Here in Victoria, Melbourne, Victoria, we don't really get that cold where it's freezing, where it's going to be hard for the tree to handle. We don't really get that cold at all. So I do find that any time other than springtime, to avoid damaging the tree unnecessarily, you can rewire them any other time. So with removal and the wiring will be taken at the same time. Can be done at the same time. Now, how long do you leave the wire on a cedar? This really, if you're wiring a new apex up, just like we did earlier, we chopped it down, wire new apex up. You've got to check that within 2 or 3 months, because the apex being the top of the tree, it's going to take off very quickly. The wire will bite in very, very quickly. But if you're wiring on anything that you have brought down, as far as this is concerned, all the wire is bringing all the branches down. We said earlier, by bringing them down, we have weakened it severely already. So for that wire to set, you need to be left on for minimum 12 months, minimum. Because by wiring them down, often those branches will just sit there. They won't move much. So they need all that time for the branch to set. Now we're talking about cedars, okay? Any other species work differently, but on cedars in particular, once the branches wire down, because there won't be much growth happening on them, so need to be left on minimum 12 months here. And sometimes even after 12 months, the branch has hardly moved, so we might leave it on even longer. So the best way to assess that will be, we need to check on it probably once a month, whether or not the top need to be checked first, because those areas grow strong, the wire might bite in quicker. But anything down low, it'd be quite safe to check them after 12 months, because they have no, they are the weakest part and they are the slowest part to kick off and grow, so we can leave it on a lot longer. So when do you take the wire off? When it's begin to bite in. And cedars, their bark is actually quite thick. The hardwood in there often is quite small. If you cut off a cedar branch, you can see the ring of bark around the branch is very, very thick. So because of that, they take longer to set, because the hardwood is quite small compared to the bark. So they do take longer to set, but definitely you got to watch out for the top, because they will bite in straight away. So that will be, I'm sorry it's not a, take it out in 6 months. It's really need to watch the tree and where the branch or where the trunk is wired. So you need to adjust your expectation accordingly.
And also, it was determined by the species grow quicker than others as well. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. If you're wiring, let's say you're wiring a maple. If you put a wire on in early spring with all that exponential amount of growth, you need to take the wire up in 2 weeks' time. It grows that quick. Maples, Chinese elm, they just grow so quick in the spring. So it really does differ from case to case. But let's say if you're wiring a tree right now, before that's in the start of winter, I don't need to look at the wire again in about 3 or 4 months' time, because the tree is not moving. So it does differ from the time of the year when it's applied and how much growth is coming out. Then you can decide. So it's pretty much how much growth dictates how soon or how late you remove the wire.
And one interesting thing that you told me a while back is the reason that you used the silver color wire as opposed to brown colored.
The logic is quite simple. They're cheaper. That's really that's all that is. They are $10 cheaper per kilo, and we use hundreds of kilos of wire per year. So it saves us a few $1,000s. Secondly, we use the silver wire that hasn't been anodized with a copper coating, is so that we can see them.
Yeah.
Okay, most people do not want to see the wire because we want to appreciate and look at the tree. We don't want the shining wire to be in the way.
Yeah.
But for the purpose of us running a nursery, the worst thing that happens is we use something that blends into the trunk, and then we forget about taking the wire off. And we have learned that from those bad experiences, that we just forget to take them off because we can't see them. It just blends in too well. So since that we use the cheaper wire, that does the same thing, but we can see. So since then, there have been very, very few occasions where the wire bites in, because we can see them, so we can be reminded to remove them in time. So it's cheaper and it allows us to see. And it's only training, right? We're not, if I'm preparing a tree to be exhibited in a show, I won't use the silver wire on them. I would definitely use copper wire or anodized wire. But for the purpose of training, that's the same thing. It's cheaper, and then actually we can be reminded of that they are there. So it serves that purpose quite well. So that's why we use them exclusively to train our trees here.
Very good.
Okay.
There was one other question. I don't know who it was from, but I'll put it up on the screen. And they wanted to know what sort of fertilizer you used in the bags.
Good question. That's kind of why I chose this tree to begin with. We do feed our trees with multiple different types of fertilizer. We use slow release fertilizer like Osmocote. That's quite widely available. We use that in the potting mix. So we'll mix it up in our potting mix, and we'll pot up our trees with those already mixed in there. Then we will also keep our tree liquid fertilizer. We'll come around. We would, in general, feed them with liquid fertilizer once or twice a year, just for instant boost, and the tree takes it on straight away. And we also top it up with something like this, for organic fertilizer, bagged up like this and secure in position. The reason it needs to be secure because we have an army of birds out there. You just leave it there. Next morning they'll be everywhere. They will just create such a mess. So we need to pin them down. So the fertilizer we use in them will be just organic fertilizer that you can get our hands on. Often what I said is whatever is on special, whatever is on sale. They are very similar because often they have like 2% nitrogen, 3% potassium, and they are very, very similar. So here in Australia, we use Dynamic Lifter, Rooster Booster, Seamungus. Although Seamungus is a pelletized form of sea salt, I wouldn't really regard it as a fertilizer as such. But yeah, all those organic fertilizer, we can use them. One of the beauty of using them in a bag is if you just put a handful on top, again, birds will come and pick them away, and when you water them, it just goes everywhere. It's just not very pretty, not very neat. So put them in a bag like this. That allows us to water them, and it comes out in a more controlled way. If you can imagine, put a handful, you water them, it just spread everywhere. It just releases too much nutrient in one go because it's all very scattered. But when it's in a concentrated form or bunched up in the bag, it releases slower over time, and that's a better way for the tree to take up the nutrients because whatever the tree doesn't take up, it just washes out. And some of you might think, well, aren't we supposed to position the bags out on the exterior so that the roots grow out instead of grow in? I agree with that theory, and that's what we do as well. However, if you can look at a tree like this, you place them right around the edges. Right now, the tree is not being fed whatsoever because it's just sitting there. The tree is only being fed by the liquid fertilizer, by the bag of fertilizer that we apply when we water the trees. So the nutrient will come out. What I have found is if you place them right on the edges like that, you water, you can see the brown color water come out, and they come straight out of the pot. So how much it stayed in there? Very little, just comes straight out. unless you have potted your tree lower, or this is a plastic pot where the rim of the pot is higher, then you can put it right on the side. But any tree like this where the surface of the soil is right on the same level of the lip of the pot, I find if you place it too far out, you're wasting a lot of the nutrients that's coming out with the water that you're applying. So often I'll apply it right up close to the trunk. So when you water, the water has enough area to travel, then find its way into the soil. That's where it gets fed. All right, and some people might say, well, aren't you, by doing that, aren't you hurting the tree because there's so much nutrients? But it goes back to my initial point. The tree is not being fed right now because nutrient only come out with the release through our watering. Okay, only release it through our watering. Right now, the tree not being fed. Albeit it's very small amount, it's not being fed at all. And I have found that actually some of my trees, the roots grows into the bags in the summer month. You might say that that's because it's cooler in there, but if the fertilizers are harmful, why would the roots grow in that? Okay, and because they are liquid, they are organic fertilizers, they are often very, very weak dosage in the nutrients. Like I said, they are like 2 or 3%. Most of what makes up the fertilizer are organic matters. So I will definitely not use a very concentrated chemical feed in a bag like this. That's just too much. But organic feed, I don't mind doing it on, in this way, up close to the trunk, is still okay. But if you can place it further out, space out, that'll be better. All right, but in this way, I don't mind. And another point is, if you really truly hurt your tree, then when you liquid feed your tree with a hose or with watering can, do you avoid watering the trunk? People don't avoid watering the trunk, do you? Yeah. So if that's the case, why would this hurt the tree when the nutrient that comes out is even weaker than the liquid fertilizer you're applying? All right, so that's my logic. I'm not trying to convince you to do what I do, but that's my logic behind it. So I want to make sure most of the nutrient that comes out goes into the roots, not outside of the pot. And because the also having it like this allows me to shift the location. Yep. All right, let's say it's been there for 1 week, I can shift it around the location there for the next week. And then if it's on this side, I can put it on the other side. So it allows you to have a lot of control to make sure you maximize what the nutrients that you have in the bags. So that's a very useful way to utilize the resources that you have. All right, but again, that's just me. I'm not saying that this is what you have to do and people placing on the outside is wrong. It's the consideration of making the most out of what's available. Because this takes, you need to buy the fertilizer, I need to pay the guys to make the bags, I need to pay the guys to put them on. I want to make sure that I'm not wasting nutrients, just watering, it comes out. So closer to the trunk, and I have not found any sort of yield effects from placing it to the trunk, based on my logic. So organic fertilizer is what we use on top. And the nutrient only go for 2 to 4 weeks. Really after 4 weeks, the nutrients are all spent, so you can replace them. If you can reuse a bag, reuse it, tip it out, or you can just, apply new ones.
Where do you get the bags from?
Good question. This is a tea bag. You can buy from a lot of online shops. I actually got mine from, is it called Tien?
No.
Yeah, I got mine from there. It's only like a few cents per bag. Yeah. Okay, and this is another one that I got from overseas. But yeah, so just tea bags will do. And I'll go for, we have 3 different sizes. This is a larger one. You can tell this one here is a smaller one. Mm-hmm. So we will use tea bags on all the bonsais. Things that are in training in plastic pot, we do not use this. It's just too much work to bag it out and apply to tens of thousands of trees. But anything in bonsai we use, it allows us to have better control. And once it's done, put it up, done. It's nice and clean. You don't need to clean up all the residues and anything that's built up with the breakdown of the fertilizer. Okay.
Very good. Thank you for that.